G'day everybody. This is a review of one of my favourite tools. I've had a couple of people say, you review tools, what's your favourite? What are the things in the workshop that you can't live without? And I think that's probably come off the back of some other well-known YouTube channels doing something similar. So anyway, not a bad idea. If I was setting up a workshop again, what are the things that I'd first look to put in it? Obviously, outside of a tool cabinet or whatever like that, we might have a look at that separately and the type of tool cabinet that I'd probably use now. And I've covered a little bit of that in some of the reviews, but this is where I wanted to start because I really love this thing. I use it surprisingly a large amount of the time, and what I mean by that is when I started thinking about what are my favorite tools, I thought, well, what are the things I use the most? So in considering that, I started to take stock of what I did around the workshop and what are the things I use the most. And this is what pretty much came out on top. This is my bench grinder. This is an old school, a very old school bench grinder. I got this off a farmer who was retiring. It's an old Australian made bench grinder. It's very heavy. It's bolted down to my workbench. But I use this extensively. I had a very small, lightweight, more recent kind of Asian manufacturer bench grinder up until very recently. It was fine, but I could stop the blade if I was, the disc if I was grinding or brushing something heavy. Didn't have a lot of power. It's very lightweight. Kind of want to jitter. You're always tightening it up on the bench top to try and keep it bolted down. This is a lot heavier. This has got a very heavy cast base and frame. I don't know how old it is. It doesn't have a date of manufacture on it, but it is old. Old, made in Australia bench grinder. Hey, look, I'm not necessarily advocating that I know you've got to buy all made in Australia, but it's pretty cool that it was made in Australia. If you're doing anything with steel, if you're doing anything with, if you're restoring anything, doing anything up and you've got a lot of bolts to handle, taking them out, I could live without one of these. If this blew up, I would be straight down to buy another one. I'd probably, if it did blow up and I needed another one, what I would probably do first is I'd try and find one second hand on Gumtree, Facebook Marketplace or eBay or something. Try and find another one like this, another heavy, old school Australian made one with a good amount of power, rather than buy one new. If I put this up for sale, it'd sell for almost nothing, but it's worth a lot to me. Never had any problems with it. I've worn out a lot of grinding discs and brush wheels on this thing. I do have a more modern one, but it's one for polishing. It's got a flap disc on it that I use for polishing plastics and such. But for grinding, this is my go-to thing. If I'm doing anything on the car where I've got to take bolts out, if I'm building anything and I'm using old bolts, I keep a lot of bolts. If I pull something to bits, I keep all the bolts. I've got a big pigeonhole with all my old bolts in it, small, medium, large bolts, metric, imperial, etc., etc. I keep all my old bolts, and because when I come to build something or use something, something like this workbench, you build it yourself, you keep all your old bolts, you can put it together, all you need is the timber, and you can't see them in this video, we might do it in another video, but my island benches that are around here, that this camera is standing on, is made out of old pallet timber. And it's bolted together with recycled bolts. So the bench that camera is standing on right now cost me nothing. And what I would do is clean those, if their bolts are rusty, clean them up on the brush wheel or something, bam, straight in. I find this incredibly helpful. And all purpose. You do use it for so many things. Once you've got this, you've got dull blades on your lawnmower, you sharpen it. Especially on my lawnmower, which is a big 72-inch cut diesel mower, very, very large blades, stick them on the grinding wheel, grind them up. I've been hedging in the orchard, and when you're hedging, the hedge bar can get all gummed up with sap. If you're trying to undo a bolt, it can make it a bit difficult. Brush will get all that off, make it a lot easier to reassemble. I find this just the most wonderful tool. I use it all the time. If you're doing a lot of assembly or if you're restoring anything, it could be an old chainsaw, it could be a rotary hoe, it could be a car, whatever, and you got to pull it apart. This is just fantastic. You can stick something in a vise or just in hand, and you can clean it up with a wire brush. This is so much easier. You got a busted bolt that you can, you retail, you need to grind the head off a little bit. Grinding wheel's fantastic. If I'm up here doing any sort of serious work, when I was doing kind of a stock take ahead of doing this little review, there wasn't a day that I wasn't working in the shed where I didn't use this at least once. I use it all the time, where there's lots of other tools in the workshop that I do use, but there are times that I'm up here working and I don't use them. This, unless I was purely working with wood and nails or something, there wouldn't be a time I don't go to this at least once while I'm working. Absolutely great bit of gear, and I would be reticent to be without it. I remember doing my first car, building my first car, and I didn't have one of these, and then I did the second. I think I got one maybe towards the end of it, or when I did the second one, and it was so much easier because back then I didn't have a whole lot of money to, when I was pulling something apart, to just, oh, well, that bolt's a bit rusted or looks a bit corroded, toss it away, get a new one, brush wheel it up, make it all nice and shiny, maybe you have to paint it, and comes up an absolute treat. So I love my bench grinder. Great addition to any home workshop. I would absolutely have one. I wouldn't be without one, in fact, I would say. So there you go. I hope this was useful for you. I hope you, if you haven't got a bench grinder, that you go and get one and enjoy it. Thanks for watching.